Okay, hello everybody. We are getting live over here. I'm here with Alexander Rix from United Kingdom, right?
Hello.
So this lesson is part in the series of Down Player Teaching Game and Review. Today we had a 3-stone handicap game. Okay, so we will just discuss through the game. I will make my points as they come up, and I will maybe make some questions. And Alexander, if you have questions of me, you can ask at any point also. That's totally fine.
Okay.
Right? Right. We went with a sort of a classic Josuke in the first corner. White Tenuki over here. So I suppose that up to this point we can basically say that nothing happened, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
played a few Josuke and they all seem fair. How are you feeling about the game at this point, Alexander?
Yes, as you say, nothing much has happened so far, so it's okay for black.
Right. And of course, since black has 3 stones from the start, of course, black is still better. And whatever happens in the game will happen from this point on, right? So one of the main things that I was kind of trying to set up here is that possibly, if you happen to play this attachment in the upper left corner, did you think about this?
Well, there's a ladder, isn't there?
Yes,
So
exactly. So you know it already. So I basically just set up ladder breaker with N6 in case this happens. So it's a classic quick sequence. So I guess that is how you come to know it, like this, right?
yes, so that you can't capture the 2 stones, so it's not very good.
Right, exactly. So this is the ladder we are talking about, and whether white can escape with A here or not basically makes a big difference. In case black cannot get the ladder, he can still play a hurry from the outside, in which case we usually see something like this. Now, this is of course not a disaster for black in the sense that black gets a strong outside wall, but also white gets the corner territory and sente, which can be very big, especially in a handicap game. So for example, in this game, white might now slide in the lower left corner and just make a base. So the black wall will be kind of useless. Possibly interesting to some viewers is also what happens if black extends here and tries to fight. And of course, if white just blocks in the corner, then the outside stones die. This is terrible for white, of course. But white can generally fight by connecting here and like this. And this can possibly become some very difficult capturing race. But white is in general better here. Well, basically this kind of problem exists. And it seems like there can be a ladder, which, as we established, is good for white. Okay. Well, that's just something
Yeah.
I was thinking about in the upper left corner, but it never happened, so it's just a curiosity.
Is this bad fishing before I do that?
Yeah, so that's one interesting shape question, yeah. Did you have other ideas?
Well, you can just play R13, but it seems a bit passive.
Right, so I think most likely one of the main themes we will have in this review here also will be what is exactly passive and what is not. I think this move is it can be not passive, depending on the way you think. Because basically in the game you play like this and this and this, and it seems like you are getting more territory on the right side, right?
Uh,
But it basically follows that when white attaches in the corner, you're kind of invested in defending the territory you already made, right?
yeah.
So we basically get something like this, and if it goes normally like this. So you take the territory and white gets some outside stones, which can be totally fine. I'm not saying it's bad. But the alternative way of thinking that I would suggest here is to, if you simply play R13, and let's say white does something totally different, now you can think about moves like here, for example. So this is creating a cutting point in the white shape, right?
Yeah.
Around Q12. Well, let's say if white were to fix this, he would play something like this, I suppose. But now it's even possible there's a cutting point immediately. And even if the cut doesn't work, maybe you can do something like a touch here. This is... well, if this happens, the cut always exists anyway. Even if black doesn't have to go there, it's possible you can do something like this, and basically just start pressuring white from the center's direction, right?
Yeah.
So, strategically, the point... sorry.
R13 is better, basically.
Sorry?
R13 is better, basically.
I'm not saying exactly better, but it's a different kind of strategical idea. So, if you play this move and this move, you're kind of also helping the outside white group become stronger.
Yeah.
And in exchange, you're taking more territory.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just keep your own shape solid, even if it's a little bit less territory, because white doesn't have so many forcing moves against it, now the white center group also becomes weaker. So it looks passive, but it can be an aggressive move, depending on the way you think.
Yeah.
So that's the main strategical concept I wanted to bring up here. We will see a little bit similar later on in the game. Alright, so...
Should I play P17 instead of R17, or just take the corner?
It's possible, yes, but I think it's not consistent with the play you did so far, because you were going for a big corner territory, right?
Yeah.
So now if you did this, and how does this go? I think I play Hane here.
But it just means you don't get massive thickness, so you may get a group, but you know it's a small group, so...
Right, so we get something like this first, right? And possibly black blocks. I will just show the result first. Something like this. So, for example, if this happens, I think at least this exchange is not very fun for you anymore. Because at least this exchange is giving white a kind of stronger shape in the center already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fairly small thing, but I think there's going to be some kind of loss as a result of you switching your plans in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing I would be concerned here. Strictly speaking, I think it's fine whichever Hane you play, as long as you keep on making good shape. In a handicap game, that's usually enough. Right, so you cut here. This shape locally is a little bit inefficient, since the black A-stone is kind of becoming impossible to save, right? Or you cannot expect to get much with it. So there would be a chance to do a bit better here. So the kind of hint here, as we see in the result, is that white N15 is just becoming a kind of good position or good shape for white. So in an after-game review, we can think about black trying to take that singular point for himself. So white can of course get this one in center, black connects, but then what? So if it's one of the white Hanes, you get to cut. And this way you can actually create a group in the center.
Yes.
If it's this kind of a connection, and black can jump down and make a position like this.
Yeah.
And if it's the other one, you can still jump from this side at least. And in this game, maybe something like this, for example. But that's only something that we can basically figure out after we have played the game and found that white kind of got a good shape out of it. It's kind of difficult to come up with this in the game if you don't know it previously. What happens if you don't play anything in this area, like simply here?
Yes, I think I was sort of thinking N17 would be okay, but I just got into trouble thereafter, so...
Okay, so you basically, it was a combination with this one. Okay, that makes it easier.
But I didn't get a very good result, so...
I guess many lower down players actually might play like this as white, right? And let you play the extension. Which would kind of be like your dream result, I guess.
Yes, I mean, I'm not quite sure whether I played the best moves in the resulting sequence, but...
There's a little bit to improve, but I think that there is a general problem in that when white gets to play here, it's getting a little bit busy for you. And the problem for that is that these 3 white stones here are actually, they are expendable if white gets something reasonably good in exchange. Like, for example, here, you could capture them immediately. I would just give them away.
Yes, the centre is looking too white, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a part of the problem, right? And it's even possible that I start playing this kind of stuff and putting pressure on your group in the upper left corner.
Yes.
So it's a kind of basically an overextended shape. It makes sense in the sense that it's the shape point of these white stones here, right? The key eye point, as we call it. But the key point becomes less valuable if white can just sacrifice one of the 2 groups.
Yeah.
So it's most efficient if white is forced to actually defend everything he has. So in that sense, for example, just simply making this extension and next making this one a little bit later in the game, when the territorial value of 016 is bigger, would have been an easier way to play. And white might respond like that, but you're actually happy with this, right? Because you didn't really expect to attack the whole right side white group.
Yes, it's good enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in the handicap game.
Yeah, this is basically white becoming over-concentrated. Right, so this didn't happen in the game. You attached and cut, which I think is correct here locally. This one... most likely K15 is the start of your problems. I would think that simply capturing the 1 white stone should be locally fine enough.
Yes, I've got Gote, but it's good shape.
Right, and this way it's also impossible for white to make use of the A weakness, for example, as happened in the game. So it's possibly a little bit slow, but... well, there is a second idea. If this is considered too passive, then you could try to fight all on like this. Did you think about this in the game?
You just capture that stone in a ladder, is that not good enough for you?
So at that point, let's say you go out here.
Where you can play Atari and then connect to L14.
Atari here. So at that point I go here.
Okay. Yeah, well, then you take, I suppose.
Take 2 stones and capture here, and white plays this Atari and this, and I guess this is Sente as well. So this way you get some more territory and white gets some stronger shape, but it's hard to say which one is better, this one or the simple variation I showed.
Yeah.
I guess white should be happy with this kind of a capture in general, so this one has the merit of leaving some kind of this kind of potential, for example, like you played later in the game. There is also an even crazier possibility would be to go out first and then play here, which would be totally going all in.
That sort of feels quite extreme, doesn't it? Because you're giving that a tortoiseshell shape to white.
Yeah, exactly. 60 points. And all you get is basically these 3 stones over here, in exchange to which black has this weak group here now. White will just start attacking.
Yeah.
Yes. So there was many kinds of interesting fighting possibilities here, but I think just playing the simple way, cut and capture, would probably be the best. So the game shape just got a little bit uncomfortable with this one, right?
Yeah, I just over-concentrated.
Of course, white shape is not quite perfect either, but it kind of seems like white gets to play on both sides.
The only thing is I get center, so it's the only thing, but it's not great.
I mean, actually white could take Sente as well, just play elsewhere. Since the AB exchange already kind of works for white, it prevents this black move here.
Yeah.
Probably the best black can do is something like this kind of a smaller endgame.
Yeah.
But I figured I will just take the territory for now.
Is that a very good move? Should I play, I don't know, something like c8 or something?
Yeah, so this is actually a good point to take a look at what's happening on the board, I suppose. Where are the big areas in general? And so you mentioned c8 already, right? So it seems that you think that left side right now is the most important area, right?
Well, that's what you've got. Well, apart from the centre, but the left side is the obvious place for you to take, apart from the centre of your territory.
Yeah. And there is also the additional question that actually, if we think about the groups on the board right now, general heuristic is that you try to think of the relative strength of the existing groups on the board, well, important groups, let's say, and try to figure out the weak or the weakest groups on the board. Then usually playing close to those groups is the most valuable area in general. And conversely, playing close to the strongest groups on the board is, well, that's usually a small area. You don't want to play there. For example, if you play something around here and it doesn't really do anything to the white group, white can just ignore it, right? So at most, you are not making a territorial difference. You might be making yourself a target. And that's about it. So I think actually just those heuristics we talked about is already enough to identify c8 as possibly one of the best moves here. Basically, once you have
E13 is too close to my other group.
Yeah, so the main problem with that move is that...
You can cut.
It can be cut?
You can 14 and cut it, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually the main problem with it is the fact that both white B and black C, they are both very strong groups, right? You don't... If you play close to B, you run the risk of getting under attack yourself. And if you play close to C, then you are kind of strengthening your already alive group, right?
Yes.
So just that part makes this area a little bit misguided. So I was just starting to mark off here that since we know that A is the weakest kind of important stone on the board, then most likely this area is going to be the most interesting area, let's say. As for which move here is the best one, that one we cannot possibly know, because there's so many options. I think you could kick here, for example, and then make it into a running fight.
Yeah.
Or you could just simply pincer. I don't even know which pincer is correct. Most likely there's several ideas.
Yeah.
Or it's even possible that maybe just taking the corner might be enough. It's maybe a little bit passive in that it doesn't do much to white, but at least it's in the correct area of the board.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of logic I think we want to think of here. Okay, so I fixed my weakest group. You built the lower side. That's a nice point as well. I have to go in. So you're moving at the center. It's also an interesting area since if white gets a chance to play, something like this is good, right?
Yes, it just seems to... I'm struggling to reduce that area and make a safe group.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Then we got the lower right corner attack, which also became totally... well, you can call it a fair exchange, I think.
Is that a bit small?
That's a tough question, actually, because it's totally not a small move, and I was... it put me in a bit of quandary, we can say. I wasn't quite sure how to answer it. I mean, in the game I just ignored, because I figured that even though you can cut off the two stones, it's kind of small for now, right?
Yes, it doesn't. I just take those two stones, and that's so what?
But I mean, that's not the only merit with your move, because you also have this cut here if possible, right? I mean, if necessary.
Yes.
So it also means that even if it's a little bit passive move, it makes the black shape in the center incredibly strong. Before you played this move, I could have thought of something like pincering around here and looking at the cutting point you have, right?
Yes.
And all these kinds of prospects also, they're just totally removed with this one defense.
Yeah.
So
Also, I thought it gave me another platform to jump into your center for the further later on.
yeah, like a M10 for example, right?
Yeah.
That came over here. So wait, I'm just checking my stream because something is a little bit weird here. Ah, yeah, it's working correctly. Yeah. My own stream was lagging behind, so it seemed like I didn't do the transition from the waiting screen to the commenting screen.
Yeah,
Which
there's a lag between live and what happens on Twitch, it seems.
Yeah, but it seems to be working perfectly. Yeah, so it's a defensive move with some territorial value. But if we want to think about the weakest group on the board kind of logic, what would you do in that case?
Well, F3, I'm not sure if that's really weak.
Sorry?
It can easily. F3, F4 is easily. I mean, the stone at E13 is sort of slightly hanging, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So lower left corner black group and also the hanging stone at C as I marked it, right?
I wouldn't call A and B weak because it's effectively alive, but
yeah,
it's not. Yeah.
Relatively speaking, yeah.
C is the weakest stone I've got.
Mm-hmm. So let's think about that possibly in that case. So if we want to call C weak, I guess we kind of need to assume that white goes for this kind of an attack, right? Because otherwise it's going to get connected. Can we save this black stone? How would this fight develop usually?
I think you just run away somehow because the group, the top group is alive. So I mean, you might cut, I suppose. Gives you something to do, and then run away.
Cut and this kind of an extension, I guess.
And then something like E10 or something.
E10, AlphaGo style.
Well, you're weak, so you need to sort of run away somehow. But you've got a weak group, haven't you?
Do you mean white or black?
Well, white isn't perfectly strong because you've got potentially got to cut it to A14, but I think you can just Atari your way out. So I think it's not. Well, I suppose there is a weakness. The F14 stones aren't perfectly strong, but you've got stronger stones nearer to those stones than I've got nearer to my stones.
Yeah, so if there's no direct way to capture these two stones, then most likely black is more in danger, right?
Yeah.
I think if I were to handle here, I would do just a little bit differently. Because, for example, if you play this cut too early, it may remove some of your future options. Like, you might want to have this one instead in center, just to get quicker out in the center. So the cutting move here is basically you're saying that white is also in danger. You're attacking white back by cutting white, right?
Yes, that wouldn't be my first instinct to go there because the black group is alive. So the important thing is to try and find a route, not for that whole area to become white.
Yeah. So with that kind of thing in mind,
F9 or something.
F9? That seems like a nice kind of feeling, but if I do this kind of a cutting play?
Well, maybe you give it up because you've got the G4 and G6 stones, which are weak from the other side.
So you kind of want to wrap it up into a counterattack, let's say. Something like this, maybe?
Something like that, yes. I mean, who knows
Yeah, of course the risk you run here is that if you don't now manage to capture them, then you just gave white a big territory on the left side.
Yes.
So I guess in that sense, I would at this point try to think of it in a little bit more modular way, I guess. So, well, of course, we missed one black move earlier, so that's a key thing. But if you think the white stones at D could become a target for attack, of course you could just go to attack first of all before white does anything, right?
Yes, but I think it's what is it? It's white's move in this position. No, it's black's move. Sorry. Yeah.
Ah, yeah, because we didn't play the N8 move, which was possibly a little bit slow as we talked.
Yes. Yes, I thought about E6, but I thought that N8 sort of poked your shape maybe a bit stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make stronger, but making your group stronger is impossible. Is important. Sorry, only if you're actually in danger of being attacked right now.
Yes.
Which is probably not quite yet the case, because of white is more busy with G4. G4 as in this one. So, well, it would just be one possible way of playing. Or, if, as you say, the C-stone might be a little bit weak, then maybe you could do something fairly simple as, let's say, jumping down here. This should mean that even if white cuts here, you can just play something simple like C11. And I'll keep it very simple. Jump like this. And you probably shouldn't be in danger of getting wiped out here, right?
Yes.
So I guess that would be the simplest way if we think about it. If we think about this whole board situation as a kind of a strategical entity, let's say. Try to identify the possible weakest groups in this sense, and then try to play in an area that affects them most of all. Conversely, well, you played N8, which had it was basically fulfilling several functions, which means that it is actually an effective move. But how it relates to the current fighting balance of the whole board might still be a little bit lacking, because it's at least partially fixing something that shouldn't be fixed quite yet, because this wasn't the weakest area of the board. Okay, so I fixed there. Then we went for territorial play. Lower side becomes black's. I played this fighting move here. And you peeped here. Was this a ladder breaker?
Yes.
Alright, so let's say white answers. What do you do next?
Well, I was going to harness C14.
And if white cut here, then you would be doing exactly what you planned, like this, right?
Although that's perfect for black, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Which is why I was going to connect.
Yeah. And then maybe that group might get into trouble, but at least you've broken white's territory.
Right, so I was basically planning that you can break my territory, but you have to do it with an empty triangle. And then I get to cut you here, and you cannot really even cut me back because the shape is just going to be way too hideous, right?
Yes.
So my general design was something like this kind of a fight, basically. And well, sorry?
It's not great for black.
It's not too great, but as long as your group gets out, it's still not a big loss either, right? It's just a kind of a erasure sequence, kind of.
Yes.
But in the game, I basically figured that I don't really need to connect at A if I just push from the center, as we saw. So that gave white a little bit more fighting power in the sequence, we can say. So now again, if you still went for this one, I would just connect same as earlier. Hane here, same as earlier. And now it actually seems like black is in big trouble, right?
Yes, well, I pulled back because I just wanted to make myself strong.
Yeah, I think that was correct. So what happened in the game, basically,
Oh.
yeah, up to here it's basically what we could expect, I guess. The cut here may have lost you quite a bit of speed since you gave me this one.
You think I should just jump into the center and erase that territory and force you to connect?
That would in general be better, yes. Since the cut as a move in itself, it's just a neutral point, right? It doesn't make territory for anybody.
I
So,
was just thinking also it was a bit of protection for my group because I can then capture F7 but I think
yeah,
that's
so
a bit,
you can get your this chain saved basically, right?
yeah, so there are two ways that can get saved. So it's just a bit, yeah. But as you say, it's better to erase your territory maybe.
I think in that case you could probably also save it in this fashion, right? I think by our general discussion, this is supposed to be center, since if white doesn't defend, the left side is going to be open.
Yes, and it makes much better shape.
Yeah, so that's totally connected. And then you don't have to exchange this move for this move, which has to be a net loss, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah.
Possibly you also had this kind of a move available. This might be very nice. So white has to answer, right?
Yeah.
So now let's say you play around here in the center. So what is kind of happening here is that white is already cut in a very messy sequence, but white is technically cut. And also, if something else happens, let's say if black gets cut around here, it can also be a backdoor for black. Well, possibly it might become some kind of a exchange sequence like this, but I think you don't mind if this happens.
Yeah.
So it's possible there was something strategically similar to what you did in the game, but which you could kind of get for free in this fashion by going for the other main weakness in the white shape. But yeah, these are always very difficult. Also, the sequences we saw weren't really clear-cut, so it could become very complicated fighting like this. Okay, so I of course prepare to sacrifice the A stone, since I figured that both black and white are now alive. This got traded. Yeah, so basically from this point on, I was kind of checking if you have realized the weakness at A and how you would handle it. I guess you didn't notice it.
Yes, I didn't see that was a, well, I didn't analyze it properly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't analyze it properly, so that was,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's actually not a huge problem. It should be manageable, but white will probably get some kind of endgame profit here. We can see that one soon. I think that's our last main discussion.
I think I played D11, did I?
Oh yeah, it came here. Most likely the block here was a little bit slow, since white kind of... As white I was going to fix this problem with my play. I guess you were also aiming for this, right?
Yes.
So no matter what white does, he kind of gets cut apart, for example, if this happens.
Yes.
So if white can play this exchange in center, then when black cuts, now black is basically too busy to do anything, right?
Yeah.
But I think black also doesn't really need to play this move, because his group is totally alive.
It was very, wasn't it? Jumping in there somehow.
Yeah, that's actually very good endgame problem for our viewers, I think. What should black do with relation to the white shape around A?
Can you cut at L14?
L14? Yeah, I guess that works immediately as well. I will play here in that case.
But yes, of course. But then you've got N18 does work quite well then.
So this kind of a thing. But now what has also happened here is that black has made a kind of a loss-making exchange here with the L14 and J13. So if possible, we would just want to avoid that one. So you can also, I think, directly cut here. So now if white defends here, you can still get this cut in center. White has to answer this way. Or you can later on play as you did also in the game, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah.
So basically what happened in the game was that in response to this one, because white had this exchange, white becomes able to resist it with the strongest way possible. Whereas if you start from the cut, it makes it well, among other things, white still might think of playing like this, but that also means that he will get cut in the center, which can be potentially dangerous. Actually, is it? It's fine. Huh, sorry about that. I think white is actually in general fine here. I was thinking there was some bad agi with this kind of thing, but the white shape is connected enough.
Yeah.
So I guess actually in that case, just your move is best, I suppose. Well, that means actually to cut as well. Like white can just directly go here, huh?
Yeah, black isn't strong enough, as you say, to really do anything.
Yeah, so I suppose it's still back to just the normal N18 move then. That's a bit disappointing. That also makes my move in the game, this J13, quite a bit smaller. Huh? Oh well.
So it felt quite big to me.
Yeah, I mean it's big, but it's not as big as letting black get out with these stones.
Yes.
So at least some merit to it. Okay, so then we have the final discussion here. Yeah, that's also a big endgame, since if you don't play it, and for example take this one, then white Q18 is just going to fix it all. So that's definitely also huge. So you resigned here, but I think black could still fight a little bit. So if you block here,
Okay.
so this will be like this, and it's basically a co-fight. I guess the main problem for this is that we have kind of exhausted black's threat. No, but you have at least this corner. I think I guess...
Isn't it a sort of flower viewing co for you? You're not really going to lose anything in this co, and I'm losing the whole group.
That is true, yes, but you need to think it from the point of view that you used to have a problem at A anyway. So you are just kind of managing it in a proactive way. You got, in exchange for you having this weakness, you earlier got sent to play elsewhere, basically.
Yeah.
So you have already kind of cashed in on it, and then you just have to face the call. So in that sense, it's not flower weaving, in that you already got something for it. Also, possibly white is losing a few points in the process of this. So capture, co-threat here. Does white answer?
Well, let's assume that white answers, because otherwise...
So what would happen here? These are the biggest threats, I guess. Yeah, that can be a bit painful. This has to be answered.
It's getting a bit hard to make a major co-threat now, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately it does seem that way. Going out here? Most likely it's not big enough though. Does it even work?
Yeah.
Is also a question. It does work like this, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, then white definitely has gotten a big profit here. Okay, one more idea. If not for the co-fight, how about if you play from this side?
You can also play n6.
Yes, that was the idea. So then, if it's possible for black to play like this or not.
Presumably you have to play k4, do you?
Yep. And what's going on here?
Does
I
n9?
guess, strictly speaking, it's going to die like this, I suppose. Oh, m9 does make it live, yes. So white m9 is correct. Which means... yeah, this way it dies. I'm sorry about that phone call.
Ravine. Oh, hold on. Can you hold on 1 second? That's just my wife wants to get in. Just hold on a second.
Sure.
Seconds. Yeah.
Okay, Alexander goes up for a little bit. We are pretty close to the end of this review already. So let me just recap what happened up until this point then.
So I'm back.
Okay, that was quick. I was about to start the recap, but you came quickly. Is it fine? Yeah, so this way black group is still dying, right? Alexander?
Yeah, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's going to be one eye like this. That was actually a kind of fun thing that I was thinking from earlier on already. Like, for example, at around the point when this happened, what if you here played the 08 move? Because right now white has a problem here, right? White kind of has to, well, prevent this cut. So white wants to connect like this, right? In which case you can get this move.
Yeah.
And that can possibly give us the very, very important half eye at A for the eventual cut. So I think, well, finally speaking, I think the main thing is just that fixing the A weakness would have made the game closer. But there could have been very tricky ways like this to more actively avoid the problem. If you could, of course, you had to realize the problem at first, which was the main thing.
Yes, I think I went wrong at N12. Or sorry, M11 wasn't a particularly good move. I should just play N10 or something.
That might be the more common shape here, yes. So white has to defend in this kind of way. But there's actually still some problem, right? Like white can start peeping around here.
Sure.
Of course, right now it also relates to the fact that white has weakness here. So it's not extremely clear cut. Maybe this is correct. How about this one? Most likely white dies first. But yeah, so there is some feeling that in this area you kind of overextended yourself in the attack. Possibly. I guess even without... Well, I think it's possible to find a little bit better technique here, like attaching here possibly. So relying on the fact that black has this follow-up, and possibly then an Atari.
Yeah.
So white defends like this, and you can get this one in center now. But the cutting point is still there, though.
Yes, I provoke you to make 0-7, and it sort of suddenly the thing gets a bit horrible.
Oh, wait a second, this wasn't a good one. I'll just connect. Okay, this one actually does solve it. Since if white defends it in this way, white is kind of paying the tax of Q7. There's going to be a cut later.
Yes.
Whereas if white simply connects... sorry, it was... if white simply connects here, in that case the cutting sequence is not going to work yet. There's going to be this kind of a recapture sequence. So I guess we can see that finally when we think about the result, this was the key area of the board, because this created the weakness in your shape. But of course finally it's still about reading, since if you had realized the problem later, I think you could still have just defended in this fashion. Let white split the territory to keep your main group defended.
That felt quite big though.
It's quite big, but it's also Gote, so if white takes it now, you can take a big move elsewhere also. Maybe play the Atari first to be sure.
Yeah.
That's in general safe, right? Yeah, that's safe. But yeah, so that finally became the key fight about this game. Yeah, but recapping the whole game in general, I guess the main thing would be about, especially in the early game and in the middle game, to try to think about the whole board as a strategically as a number of groups that are fighting, and basically just try to prioritize your moves by the fact that weaker groups usually need more care and should be played close to more early. So especially for this C6 tone around here, sorry, when it later came to this area of the board, right?
Yes.
Most glaringly here you played close to kind of settled group already, when the lower left corner area was more urgent, we could say.
Yes.
And kind of extending the same logic also here, we should be viewing this white wall as strong, so you should be keeping some distance from it. For example, at this point you can still view this upper left corner black group as the weakest one, so you should add some stones to it, and then it's just a question of what makes the best shape for it. Okay, do you have any questions of the content so far? I think we went quite quickly about them, but...
I think that's fine. Thank you very much for the game.
Right, thank you, Alexander, and I hope you had a good time.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody for watching. We will conclude here then.